You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
In late April, the U.S. Department of Labor announced revisions to the Fair Labor Standards Act, which could impact dealerships that have employees with overtime. Today, Tillman Coffey, partner of Fisher Phillips, is going to walk us through what you need to know on this law, because this could change things for those people that are currently under salaries, right? So thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Sure. A lot of dealers out there nervous about this.
Yes, they are. And the good news that we're going to get to is it likely won't impact many employees of a dealership.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a few minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So talk to us. What's behind this overtime rule?
Well, it starts with a misnomer. It's not really a new overtime rule. It gets the label new overtime rule because the Department of Labor's new rule is intended to make more employees eligible for overtime by increasing the salary basis of pay component of a white collar exemption. I'll explain what those are.
Okay.
And the thought is that if the salary amount has to increase, a lot of employers won't want to make that increase, and they will switch the people back to exempt, and then they will be, or non-exempt, and then they will be eligible for overtime. So that's sort of the theory behind it.
Gotcha.
But you need a little background to understand how the pieces fit together, what the law rule does and doesn't do under the Fair Labor Standards Act and some state laws, and you need to check both if you're a dealer in a different state.
Sure.
Most employers are required to pay minimum wage for all hours worked in a work week, to pay overtime at time and a half a regular rate for all hours worked in excess of 40 in a work week, and to keep accurate time records of those employees that are known as non-exempt employees.
Okay.
The law also has a number of exemptions that would exempt qualifying employees from some of those requirements.
Okay.
The exemptions that will be impacted, and the only ones that will be impacted by the rule change, are called the white collar exemptions because they're more of a professional type employment situation. The specific name are the professional, administrative, and executive exemptions.
Okay.
To qualify for one of those exemptions, an employee has to meet two requirements. It's got to perform the primary duties of the exemption as required by law, and the employee must be paid on a salary basis.
Okay.
Now, a lot of employers, dealers and other employers, believe that paying somebody a salary is enough, but that's not what a salary basis means. In today's world, under the current rule, to be paid on a salary basis, an employee must receive a minimum salary of at least $684 per week.
Okay.
And that salary cannot be subject to deduction based on quantity or quality of work. So the result of that is if you do not meet the duties requirement and the salary basis requirement, then you are not entitled to the exemption, and you will be entitled to overtime pay if you work in excess of 40 hours. So that's how we get to the new overtime rule.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Now, the current number is $684 per week. It's $35,800 and something annualized.
Okay.
As of July 1st, if the rule goes into effect, and it is probably going to be challenged, but if it goes into effect, that number of $684 increases to $844, almost $200 raise per week.
Wow.
That's July 1st.
Okay. And those people that make up to that would still be eligible then for overtime.
Right.
Okay.
It's a two-stage implementation period.
Okay.
January 1st, 2025, the number goes from $844 a week to $1126 per week as of January 1st, 2025.
Oh, wow.
Again, assuming the law increases. So if you had an employee that currently made the minimum salary of $35,586, by January 1st, they would have a raise of $440 per week.
Okay.
And so employers will have to decide whether they want to increase the salary or take another option, maybe make the employee non-exempt. So that's kind of how we got there.
Right. And then, and talk to us about some of the like the salespeople and managers where they're on commission basis and
Good
such.
question.
How does that change things?
Doesn't.
Okay.
Now, this is why a lot of the people that I'm talking to, are concerned about when they hear salary increase.
Yeah.
There are a lot of dealership employees who have a salary component to their pay plan.
Right.
If they are not a white-collar exempt employee, this change does not affect them in any way.
Okay.
So the dealerships out there that are paying the counterperson or the advisor a salary, not affected by this change.
Okay. Okay.
So the other good news is, like I said, there's very few employees in a dealership that would qualify for a white-collar exemption. General manager, the dealer, department heads, maybe the controller.
Okay.
HR manager, and a few more.
Sure.
And what everybody needs to know is that, and what we encounter all the time is that a client or a dealer will use a job title as the basis for providing the exemption or claiming the exemption, when it really isn't the job title. It's not the job description. It's not what the industry does. It's what that individual employee does. So each one is an individual analysis. So
interesting. So, and then what are the consequences?
Well, if you misclassify an employee and treat them as exempt, an employee could be eligible or be required to pay back pay. And what really happens is that if you have misclassified an employee as exempt, they generally do not have time records. And they generally work more than 40 hours. And then under the law, if there are no time records, the courts and the Department of Labor will choose the number that the employee says they worked if there's no contrary evidence and if that number is reasonable.
Wow.
And not surprising, in those situations, employees work hundreds of hours a week.
Yeah, right.
At least say they did.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why it's important to get your employees classified correctly.
Right. And it's one of those things that if in the event somebody in your employment goes out and says and takes you up on this and then wins that, well, that information flows back to the staff very quickly.
Exactly, and you're right. And the real concern about a wage and hour claim is not really the back pay, although that could be substantial if you had a class action.
Sure.
But you generally wouldn't have that in a dealership because it's a small group of employees.
Right.
It's the attorney's fees, because if an employee sues for a breach of the Fair Labor Standards Act and wins anything, the attorney gets reasonable attorney's fees.
Oh, wow.
Which
Okay.
reasonable is in the mind of the beholder.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So the attorney's going to be running up all kinds of depositions and everything else that they want.
And not to cast a bad light on plaintiffs' lawyers, but they don't have an incentive to settle early or settle cheaply, because when the clock is running.
Yeah, it's running on the dealership's checkbook.
Just as an example, a few years ago, there was a case out of Florida. It wasn't a dealership case where somebody sued, and the back pay damages turned out to be about $6,000, but the attorney for that employee incurred $150,000 worth of fees.
Oh my gosh!
And a court found that to be reasonable.
Oh my gosh!
So
wow.
It's really important.
It's kind of like a punitive damage situation for that dealer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why if you're a dealer, you need to step back. And one of the things that we're recommending with this rule is that you take this opportunity to audit your compliance overall, because it's bringing a lot of attention to the rule we're talking about.
And then also to share this with the managers of the dealership that are over those employees.
Right.
So they don't say, I don't care what time you think you're leaving, you're getting that job done. And the person's like, oh, well, that's 3 extra hours.
Right, exactly.
Not realizing that you got to pay them.
One of the challenges that we see, and you may hear about this too, is getting the employees to punch in and out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of dealership employees are not considered hourly employees.
Right.
And the dealership doesn't want to consider them that way.
Sure.
And so they're a little hesitant to really be hard about the timekeeping thing.
Right.
But the sales exemption, for example, that applies to somebody who meets the primary duties of a salesperson is an overtime exemption only.
Okay.
And so if you're exempt from overtime, you're not exempt from minimum wage and timekeeping. And so you still have to have those records to verify that you paid at least minimum wage. And so there's several exemptions. The lobby for the dealership group was pretty effective back in the late 60s, early 70s. So they have they have the dealership exemptions, but you still have to apply.
Yeah, right.
Use the timekeeping thing.
As I think a lot of dealers are a little lax on that area.
Yes.
They'll just say, look, you're getting $250 a week, or you're getting $300 a week, or whatever the number is, and you got to be here from bell to bell.
Right.
Not doing the math on that
right,
sometimes.
Exactly.
And then realizing that, we didn't. And then I think a lot of dealers feel as though, well, the person might go 3 weeks and making that minimum wage check, so to speak, but then they have all of their deliveries come in the last week, and then it makes their whole month.
Right.
Would they still be would they still have to pay
it
that?
Depends on how their pay plan is set up. The government will accept a monthly true up on the hours that you work. Okay. We recommend that you keep the hours, keep up with them every day and make sure that you're in good shape. Yeah. If somebody is, you're the green peas, as you know, the green peas and you salespeople are the ones that are raise the most risk because they're not selling many cars. And they're not covering minimum wage and all that kind of stuff. And so, it's a little more challenging for them. Yeah, of course.
So I guess your message is, instead of paying $150,000, if you do get one of these claims, look at it closely, but maybe settle just as quick as you can.
Or call Fisher Phillips ahead of time, and we'll get you straightened out and save you a lot of money.
That's exactly right.
One of the things that and you may get to this, that we probably want to talk about is if you're a dealership that you have some white collar exempt employees, you may want to take a look at that now, because with this attention to this. And I would first suggest that you look to make sure they actually qualify for an exemption. Yeah. A lot of people have in their head that getting paid a salary is enough. I can pay you a lot of salaries. I've heard clients say, well, I'm paying them a lot more than they would have made if we'd have paid them overtime. It doesn't matter. So doesn't matter. So make sure they're exempt, and if they are, look and see where their salary is now. I would say, on my experience, there's probably not many white collar exempt employees that are making the minimum salary here. Right. And they're probably making more than the new numbers will be that we talked about, even after January 1st, 2025. But there could be some that aren't. Right. And if they aren't making it, leadership's got to decide what to do. Because you could have some, there's people that'll help out. Maybe they're head of the detail department and they're on a salary, or maybe they're a helper in F&I and they're on a salary, and they're not making a percentage as the F&I closers are and what have you, but they're there all the time. Right. And you come to figure, we got to do what we got to do here, right? Right. Yeah. We see, what we see a lot is we see lube techs being treated as service techs. Yep. And we see sales assistants being treated as salespeople, or BDC people being treated as salespeople. And there may be some circumstances that they qualify for the exemption, but maybe they don't. And better to know that now than to get the letter from the lawyer. And to your point, call you at Fisher Phillips or somebody there, or go to your law firm and say, hey, we need an audit done. Right? Because it could cost you a lot of money down the road. And it's relatively inexpensive to do. Yeah. I would imagine. So now, if you found somebody that is exempt, but that you don't want to pay the big salary, you got to decide what to do next. Sure. If you've got to switch them over to hourly or keep them on a salary, you could keep them on a salary, but they're not exempt, so they have to do timekeeping. If they work more than 40 hours, you have to pay overtime based on the salary, and you can do that. Sure. Or if you switch them over to hourly, what's the hourly rate you're going to pay? Right. Because it's probably not really fair to divide 40 into their current salary, because if they work more, then you have to factor in what would they make in overtime, all that kind of stuff. So it's crazy. Some thinking to do. So need a game plan to figure out what to do. Like I said, there's probably not many people affected by the change in a dealership, but it's worth looking into. Yeah, well, that $150,000 story, it just takes one, right? Yeah, it is. Yeah, and then if you've got 10 dealerships in your group, or 20, and you got that same position at all the stores, exactly. That word gets around quick, doesn't it? And when you have groups of employees, not necessarily on topic, but if you had lube techs misclassified, there's several of those, and there's several of those that have worked there because of the turnover over the last 3 years, and a plaintiff's lawyer or the Department of Labor may go try to find all those people that turn it into a bigger deal. Yeah, right. You want to be covered in this area for sure. This is where the medicine is better than the cure. I mean, that's exactly right. So let me ask you this, switching gears a little bit. We heard a lot about the non-compete agreements going away. The FTC came out, and I think it was a 3-2 decision that, we're going to do away with all non-competes. And these still exist in the auto industry at some level. Right. Talk to us about that. Is that something dealerships should be concerned about? They need to keep an eye on it. Now, the current status is that a couple of lawsuits have been filed in different Texas courts challenging the FTC's authority to do this.
Okay.
And trying to be objective about this, I think that the lawsuits are pretty solid in that on the belief that the FTC does not have the ability to do this. What's going to happen if the courts likely will issue a stay so that there'll be no enforcement until this is litigated?
Okay.
It may go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
Or
okay.
a change of an administration a new administration may, if there is one, may say, we're not going to do that under this administration.
Okay.
So we're advising clients for right now just to stand pat until there's some movement here. But if it becomes effective and they are canceled, then it is a problem because they immediately are no longer enforceable. You have to tell the people that have them they're not enforceable. And
right.
Those kind of things.
Right.
What that rule doesn't do, it does not impact the non-solicitation agreements where an employee who has signed an agreement that I won't solicit your customers or your employees, those are not impacted by the rule yet, although there's some concern that there's a pretty broad interpretation that could bring those in. But we're finding that that's actually a more effective agreement anyway than non-solicitation. And the courts are more favorable to that than telling somebody they can't take a job. So
sure. And then also the secrets and the NDA,
yes, exactly.
That's still in place, right?
That'll still be in play, exactly.
Okay.
And you'd want to make sure that you'd want that as more of a standalone thing so that if part of this gets kicked out, that remains. And most of those agreements are set up that way.
Sure. So here we are in May of 2024, almost halfway through the year already. I can't believe I'm saying that. It seems like yesterday that I was wishing guests on the show Happy New Year, and here we are. Half the year's gone. But nevertheless, from your position and your perspective, working with dealers all over, what should dealers be focused on in addition to items like this? Is there anything that's pressing that?
Well, here's what I'm seeing in my practice, and what I'm seeing in publications is that comments that people are making in the dealership, words that they're using. In fact, I'm going to write an article about this. Is that I think the dealership life, and I love dealership.
It's a unique one.
It is.
There's no question.
There's downtime.
Sure.
And people say things and joke, and
Yep.
it's a joke until somebody gets their eye poked out that it's no longer a joke.
That's right.
So
we are a little laxed in this industry on that, for sure.
And I remind dealerships when I do training,
I
understand. I like to have fun as much as anybody, but you got to be really careful because
you really do.
Just never know.
That's right.
So those kind of things.
That's right.
I think it's a great industry. I think it's a great opportunity for people to make a lot of money and to do it the right way and treat people the right way.
And that's another area that dealers need to, because I agree with you that we do get kind of, off the beaten path there, and we'll be joking around with people and use off-color jokes or refer to individuals in a certain way or what have you, and you can offend a lot of people, even if somebody's listening, to me talking to you, making fun of your, background or your religion or whatever the case might be. And they're the ones that say this is totally unacceptable. So, even though you may say, oh, it's no big deal, no problem. So I think dealers underestimate that. But it's, again, one of those areas that you do need an attorney to come in to have a class, right? To go, look, we got to check this box here to make sure that we've told everybody what the rules are, right?
So if I were to hear, what you just explained is something I encountered with a client, is that they have trouble getting customers to submit CSI surveys. They had a situation where 2 employees were using inappropriate language in the showroom, and a customer heard that.
Yep.
And that customer submitted a survey, identified the 2 employees and the words that they had used.
Yeah.
That got the factory's attention. I mean, it's like, wait a minute.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So
probably got the individuals fired.
Probably did.
Yeah.
I can't say that. Admit or deny that, but it probably did. But that's, and what happens is that people become friendly with each other and drop their guard a little bit.
Yeah.
But you just never know.
That's right. You also never know when one of these is on.
Yes.
And you get that all of a sudden on TikTok or Facebook to go, hey, I was sitting there waiting for my car to be serviced, and these 2 guys are, messing around over here, and here it is in their own words, When
I do training, I advise every manager in that room, and even when I do employee training, is that you have to assume that people are recording you. Now,
That's right.
I wouldn't be able to do it because I can barely use my cell phone, but certainly the younger people can,
Oh, yeah.
and we're seeing a lot of that.
That's right.
So
That's
be
right.
careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
No joke is worth losing your job and your reputation.
That's right. My young daughter, 23 years old, she just graduated from college, and she'll say something to me, and I'll say, I never said that to you. Where did you come up with that? I never said it to you. Just hold that thought. Boom, boom, boom. Here it is.
Exactly.
Like, I didn't know you were recording. So they're going to hold you to it.
Right.
It's something. So Tillman Coffey.
Exactly.
I love that name. Partner at Fisher Phillips. For those dealers out there that want to get more information on this and protect your assets and your dealership and your associates, this is the company that you want to call. So thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it.
Really
Thank you, sir.
appreciate it. Yep. Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.